The story didn't begin loudly or dramatically, but with a moment almost no one could have predicted. And truthfully, the way things unfolded behind closed doors would shock anyone who hears it. Word had already spread everywhere that Michelle Obama was going to meet Malia's baby for the very first time, and the internet was already buzzing. But what the world thought was happening was only the surface. The real event carried a weight that no outsider could see. It wasn't a simple family gathering. It was a moment layered with emotion, quiet anxiety, and a twist that life had prepared long before anyone realized. Many believed it was just a typical grandmother meets grandchild moment, but it was nothing close to ordinary. For days before the visit, Michelle was constantly preparing herself, telling only a few trusted friends that something about this felt different. She had held newborns before. She had watched generations grow. Yet this particular moment felt heavier, almost as if fate was revealing something to her. She told everyone she was excited, but people near her noticed how her fingers trembled whenever the subject came up. She presented herself as composed, but even her closest circle could see the truth. She was hiding something. And yes, that part is real. There was already a strange, quiet tension inside the Obama home long before the car ever pulled into the driveway. The family kept nearly everything secret. It felt like they were shielding something more delicate than just a birth. Sources said Michelle wandered the house checking things repeatedly, straightening frames, adjusting pillows, repositioning blankets, fixing small things that didn't matter, as if keeping busy would keep her mind from drifting to the thought she feared most. And this is where the story begins to twist. Because those around her sensed that Michelle wasn't just stepping into the role of grandmother, she was stepping into a memory she had locked away. The surprising part was that even Barack moved differently during that time. Usually he filled a room with humor and ease, but instead he walked slowly, spoke quietly, and seemed deep in thought. When a friend asked if he was nervous, he smiled gently and replied only, "Maybe more than I expected." Everyone knew there was more beneath that answer. Whatever was approaching, it was stirring something deep in both of them. Something even close friends had never witnessed. The house grew still, time stretching in long, heavy seconds. Michelle stood by the window with a tiny blanket she had purchased weeks earlier, holding it like a person holds a memory instead of an object. She stared at the outside world as if waiting for a signal or an explanation life had never given her. And what made this moment unlike any other was that it wasn't only about welcoming a child into the family. It was Michelle confronting something she deeply feared but also longed to face. No one understood why she whispered to herself softly that morning, repeating the same sentence, "I hope I'm ready." When the car finally rolled into the driveway, Michelle's pulse surged. Her breathing grew uneven. Her eyes filled with a mix of joy and terror. She stood frozen, unable to take the first step. A longtime friend revealed later that Michelle looked as though she was reliving a memory no one knew existed. What happened next turned the moment into something far heavier than a family celebration. Michelle wanted to run forward, but her body would not move. She tried to greet them, but words vanished somewhere inside her chest. She had waited years for this day, yet when it came, she felt completely unprepared. And here comes the part almost no one knew. Michelle wasn't simply anxious, she was afraid, deeply afraid. Something buried in her past made this moment feel heavier than anyone understood, Emone, and only very few people knew the real reason. Her hands shook so strongly that Barack placed his hand gently on her arm and whispered, "Slow down, just breathe." She nodded, but her eyes showed a storm. The front door opened. Footsteps echoed, and Michelle felt her heart stop for a moment. Silence filled the room, alive, knowing, almost sentient, as though it understood something important was coming. She took one step, then stopped again. Her eyes fluttered rapidly, fighting tears that had been waiting for decades. This was more than a visit. It was a moment that would shift everything. The tension thickened. The air felt heavy. The truth hovered, close but not yet spoken. Michelle slowly gathered enough strength to move toward the hallway, though every footstep felt like dragging the weight of her entire life. Every sound hit her louder, the soft creak of wood beneath her feet, the faint hum of the house, even her heartbeat thudding like an echo. She pushed a smile to her lips, but her trembling fingers betrayed her. She didn't look like the first lady the world knew. She looked like a woman about to encounter a memory she had spent years pretending she no longer felt. Barack remained right behind her, not guiding, but standing close enough to catch her if she faltered. Still, she carried a story no one else in the world, not even Malia, fully knew. And then it happened. Malia stepped inside holding the baby, and Michelle's entire body tensed. She didn't just see her grandchild, she saw a doorway into a part of her past she believed she had locked forever. Malia paused as soon as she felt the emotional shift in the room. Even with a newborn in her arms, she sensed something was different about her mother, something deeper than excitement. She looked into Michelle's eyes and asked softly, "Mom, are you all right?" Michelle gave a quick nod, forcing calm into her expression, but the truth was written across her face. Her mouth wanted to form words, but nothing came out. Her arms wanted to lift, but fear rooted her in place. Then the baby let out the smallest sound, just a tiny cry. And unbelievably, that single noise shattered the wall Michelle had built around herself. Tears filled her eyes instantly, and she turned her face slightly, as if hiding emotion would somehow protect her. Everyone had been waiting for happiness, but instead, a tidal wave of buried feelings rushed up inside her. Uninvited, unstoppable. Silence wrapped the room tightly, almost like the walls were listening. Malia carefully stepped closer and extended the baby toward her mother, but Michelle still didn't reach out. She stood frozen, whispering something so quietly no one could catch it. This is where the moment shifted again. Michelle finally extended her hands very slowly, as if the moment might break apart if she moved too quickly. The newborn stirred gently in Malia's arms, and for an instant, Michelle almost stepped back, uncertainty flickering across her eyes. She looked overwhelmed, joy mixed with pain buried long ago. People watching assumed she was simply emotional about becoming a grandmother, but the reality was far more complicated than anyone imagined. When Malia finally placed the baby into Michelle's shaking arms, Michelle inhaled deeply, closing her eyes as though time itself had stopped to let her feel. And this is where the most unexpected moment occurred. Michelle whispered a name, not a nickname, not something random, but a name no one else recognized. Barack's expression changed instantly. He did not speak, but his eyes revealed recognition. He had heard that name before, once, late at night, during a conversation Michelle never repeated. Malia blinked, confused, asking, "Mom, who is that?" Michelle didn't reply right away. She held the baby close, tears sliding down her cheeks, and murmured, "It's been years since I said that name out loud." The atmosphere thickened, as though the room itself understood something sacred had surfaced. Barack stayed quiet but alert. He knew exactly what memory Michelle was touching. Michelle held the child, breathing unevenly, caught between the present and a past she'd hidden so deeply she almost forgot how it felt. She gently rocked the baby, while her voice trembled with an emotion she had never allowed to escape. "She looks like," Michelle whispered, then stopped abruptly, as if terrified of finishing the sentence. She wiped her tears quickly, as though she regretted letting vulnerability slip through. Malia stared hard at her mother, waiting, wanting answers, but Michelle turned away, pretending everything was normal. Nothing about the room felt normal anymore. Barack walked forward quietly, placing his hand on Michelle's shoulder as if to steady her. Not physically, but emotionally. He knew exactly which memory was resurfacing. He had been there the only other time Michelle broke like this, a moment no one in the public ever heard about. This baby, without knowing, cracked open a chapter Michelle thought she had sealed permanently. Then destiny pushed again. The newborn slowly opened her eyes, and when she looked directly at Michelle, something inside Michelle collapsed softly. painfully, beautifully. It felt as though the child was staring into her soul, unlocking doors she had kept bolted shut. Michelle whispered, "Why does it feel like I've known her my whole life?" Malia turned toward Barack in confusion, searching for an explanation, but Barack only sighed and whispered, "Some moments are bigger than we understand." Nothing felt simple anymore. This wasn't a first-time grandmother's joy. It was an emotional confrontation with a part of Michelle's history she never shared publicly. She held the baby tighter, not out of excitement, but out of connection. Raw, aching connection. The truth that had lived inside her for decades trembled closer to the surface. She fought it. She held her breath, but the silence around her pulled the truth forward. She tried to swallow it down, but she couldn't. Michelle attempted to remain composed. She smiled faintly, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Barack watched carefully, knowing she was standing at the edge of her most guarded memory. Malia stepped closer, fear replacing curiosity. "Mom, please talk to me. You're scaring me." Michelle met her daughter's eyes. Love, regret, longing, and loss all living inside one expression. Tears rolled freely. According to someone who later spoke about that day, they had never witnessed Michelle appear so fragile. She looked like someone who had been carrying a secret too heavy for too long. A secret now unraveling in front of the very daughter she once protected from it. Michelle opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally whispered, "She doesn't feel new. She feels familiar." Malia frowned, trying to understand. Familiar? How? Michelle couldn't answer. Not yet. She held the baby closer, almost guarding her as though afraid someone might take the child away. The tension deepened. Barack moved closer still, but even he didn't know whether Michelle was about to speak or break. Then Michelle repeated the mysterious name, barely audible, but clear enough that Barack and Malia both heard it. Malia's eyes widened, fear and confusion intertwining. "Mom, why did you call her that? Who is she?" Michelle shook her head, voice trembling. I didn't mean to. It slipped out." But Malia was not convinced. This wasn't accidental. Something was trying to surface. And here the story sharpened even more. Barack finally spoke, his tone gentle but serious. "Michelle, maybe it's time." Michelle stiffened, whispering, "Not today." Not like this. But the moment had moved beyond her control. The truth had already entered the room. The baby released a tiny laugh, and Michelle collapsed inside herself. She covered her mouth as tears flooded uncontrollably. Malia reached for her mother, whispering desperately, "Please tell me, what are you hiding?" Michelle looked into her daughter's eyes, full of sorrow she had buried for a lifetime. "I'm sorry, Malia. There is so much you never knew. Things I thought I'd take with me forever." Malia froze. Forever? What things? What loss? And the moment was not done. The real reveal, the core of the secret, was still coming. The truth was inches away.